Hello, everybody. And oh, I see Tony there. Hi, Tony.
How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you? Nice to
I'm
see
doing
you.
very well, thank you.
Are you in New York?
Close enough, New Jersey.
Okay, okay. Hold it on out there, hopefully.
Yeah, we're doing okay.
Great. Glad to hear it. Okay, so everybody, so we'll get started. My name is Laura Erickson. I am Head of Innovation and Sustainability at Swissnex San Francisco. I want to really give you all a warm welcome today. Thanks so much for joining us. We're going to get into some interesting conversations with some partners of Swissnex. Let me tell you just a little bit about Swissnex before we get started. Because I think maybe not everybody that's on the call knows Swissnex. But Swissnex San Francisco is, well, I like to refer to it as a platform for open innovation. These days, our platform is a digital one, and we'd like to connect with people like yourselves to be able to circulate insights and opportunity around innovation and entrepreneurship, and more generally, learning and creativity. I'm working with corporates mostly in my role as Head of Innovation and Sustainability, and looking for ways that we can help Swiss corporates connect to insights and opportunities here in Silicon Valley. Swissnex is a team of about 18 here in San Francisco, and we've got 5 offices around the world, all centered in locations that are of strategic importance for Switzerland in terms of science and technology. So I have some partners here today that we've had some fun working with on the Corporate Innovation Camp program that we run in the fall, and we'll be doing that again this year, most likely in a digital format. But I would love to introduce to you my partners, and we'll go ahead and get started with what you came here for today, which is how to innovate now. So I've got with me today Shaun Shepard from GrowthX and Jan Beránek from U+. And let me just tell you a little bit of information about them. I'm going to read a bio here, so don't mind that. But Shaun Shepard. Shaun is a founding partner of GrowthX. Shaun is a founding partner of GrowthX, and he is a globally recognized sales and marketing thought leader with over 20 years of experience bringing new products to market, including as a 5-time sales founder. In addition to helping dozens of startups find product market fit and predictable revenue models, Shaun helps global multinationals to identify new applications for their existing technology portfolio, bringing new products to market with profitable business models, and organizing and training self-managing early product stage sales and marketing teams. So Shaun is now committed to working with countries, companies, entrepreneurs, and those who want to work with them on building startup ecosystems and developing the next generation of leaders for the innovation economy. And Shaun, do you want to go into the slides? I'm not sure if Jan is with us on the call yet.
I'm here, yes. Hi.
Okay, you are. Hi, Jan. Okay, so maybe, yeah, Jan can say hello, and let me just quickly introduce Jan, and then we'll get into the show together. So Jan, who you just saw, is a founder and CEO of U+. U+ is a corporate innovations venture builder, which has helped build over 70+ ideas into becoming a reality with a total valuation exceeding 1 billion. Jan has 16+ years of experience in leading digital innovation and transformation products in Europe and the US. Jan is also a product and growth mentor at Google for Startups, which was previously known as Google Launchpad, and European Space Agency BIC. Jan is passionate about social impact investment and solving 21st century's grand challenges with software. So I know Shaun and Jan, and we've had some calls together recently, and just like all of you, I suppose, you know, what's top of everybody's mind is sort of, you know, what is this COVID situation going to do to the future business when we get back to a full market kind of situation. So I know that you guys have had some thoughts on that based on the experiences that you have with your current clients, and I thought maybe we could start off by going into some of that. Jan, Shaun, would you like to take it from here?
Perfect. Let me welcome everyone. Thanks for taking the time. Let me share my screen. Let's try if that works. Should see my screen now, hopefully. Someone can confirm. Perfect, thank you. So just in terms of COVID-19, so recently I read this quote, maybe you've seen it floating around. Bad companies are destroyed by crises, good companies survive them, great companies are improved by them, by former CEO of Intel, which I think holds true a lot. And I've been speaking with heads of innovations and CEOs of corporations across Europe and US for the past 2 months now, trying to figure out what the hell's going on and where everything is going. So we looked at what the current trends are. And today in the morning when I opened Bloomberg, I saw this. And it seems like overall, the world is moving past the inflection point, at least in terms of cases of new people coming into hospitals. So maybe we start seeing the world coming back to a normal, but probably a new normal. So sort of have one more slide where we're looking at what are the high level trends. And we agree with Shaun that we're just gonna have this as a smorgasbord of what we really heard and saw from these people, across Europe and US. So the number one thing is we see the market split really in half. Companies are screwed either because they have too much demand or because they have none, right? And everybody's trying to cope with one side of the story. And, everything is becoming much more remote, and Shaun jumped into it with anything you have. Everything is becoming more remote, and for me, as I'm now in Prague, Czech Republic, but I live in San Francisco. I flew into Prague for the 2nd of March, and I can't leave, which I'm not complaining. It's a great city, but I see the cultures of remote work being very, very different. Where in EU, almost if the meeting doesn't happen in person, it's as if it didn't happen at all. It's not as serious. At least that's what it's been like before March. In the US, it's been much more common to have video calls, etc. So at least in terms of European Union, I see people even figuring out that things like Microsoft Teams and Zoom and things like that exist, and it's becoming the new normal. And I know, Shaun, you have a quote about Manhattan real estate, right?
Yeah, I've had several discussions with corporate leaders in companies that have large footprints in major urban markets around the world that are already talking about reducing those by at least 50%, and are already starting to see decent, better than expected productivity from their work from home environments than they ever thought imaginable. And so it's causing them all to rethink their entire strategy going forward from a gathering perspective. And I too have seen a lot of what Jan is talking about, where there's very much extremes on both sides. You've got companies that are really very close to dying off, and then you have others that are trying to react and respond, either because they're in a position of strength, or they have or the new digital demand. They're conducive. Let's say they're well suited and well positioned to react and respond to the digital demand of COVID.
Right, and as I was showing the charts across what they look like across the world, in the past, let's say a month, we've seen companies be super in triage mode, where our business is corporate innovation, and we work on bringing new products to market. And GrowthX's business is trying to figure out what those markets are and how to position those products the best. And the one story that we've heard was, great, just not now. We need to figure out if we're going to exist in the next 3 months, right? And as the curve is flattening and we're past the inflection point, we're coming to a state of transformation where previously the priorities like digitization, etc., weren't high on the list, but now they're number one. And when previously we've spoken with the heads of innovation, of chief digital transformation officer, now we're speaking with the CEOs, because that's the number one priority. One more note is nationalization versus internationalization. And that's been a big topic, at least in media, for the European Union, where everybody should help each other within the European Union. But the first initial thought was, let's close everything off. Let's just deal with ourselves. Let's deal with our small country, and then maybe we'll look outside. And through a couple of workshops that we've had across, I think, the past two weeks, there has been this pressure, the sense of, I hope this is not where we're leading with this country or with this company or the society in general, that we're just going to close everything off, and it's going to be less international. I just wanted to offer my perspective where, I definitely saw that in the media, but I also see, at least on the European side of the business, on the business side, if the businesses were internationalized and have customers from multiple different countries, ideally EU, US, China, or something like that, they had a hard time staying alive. So at least from our side, our demand actually increased in terms of working, for example, in the US versus working with the rest of Europe. So that's going to be an interesting pressure to look at. Laura, did you have a question? Sorry.
No, I just wanted to hear some of the thoughts that you're having as you've been having these kinds of discussions with different innovation leaders around the world, and whatever kinds of predictions, hopes, or suggestions you might make based on some of that feedback that you're seeing. And being as we're going to be talking about market development and product development, if you guys have any thoughts about, how to think about markets right now, given that sort of, closing in, kind of tendencies that you were just discussing.
Yeah, I'm happy to field that, Laura, because obviously this is very much my focus area. I'm seeing a need now more than ever to be very hyper-focused on leveraging your current and your strongest and best relationships to dig deep to identify key problems that you can solve for now, that may or may not be core to what you're currently doing, as a way of let's just say, shoring yourself up to survive and then hopefully thrive later. And if it's done correctly, hopefully it creates a culture of functional learning where you can start to build deeper relationships, define very clear use cases, build real insights that drive new positive digital-like behaviors for yourself as well as your customers, to try and serve them digitally in the same way that you've often served them analog. A lot of our business models are very high touch, very in-person, very field-oriented. And while I believe there will always be a degree of that because of the basic human need of connection, there will be a significant shift towards a mixture, a blend, if you will. So just like the example of commercial real estate in Manhattan, for some of the largest banks in the world, rethinking their strategy, I think we're going to have a very similar kind of outcome with most large business to business and even potential business consumer business models, where there will be a blended mix, maybe even a 50-50 mix of digital services to go with our analog services.
On that note, I'm curious, Jan, in your product development efforts, are you approaching those in a different way, given that there is this sort of need to, always be thinking digital even before COVID, but now that's really come to the fore along the lines of what Shaun was just speaking to. Have you made any changes in sort of how you're approaching product development as a result of changes brought on by COVID?
Mm-hmm. I would say in our process, not really, because the process has been vertical agnostic, and it's been very much step by step, try to identify what, as Shaun likes to say, what the truth is in the market, and identify, sort of reverse engineer what that product should look like, so that the investment at the very beginning is as low as possible. That comes also with speed, right? So we can pivot very quickly the products that we're trying to build to understand where they fit in the market. And the speed factor seems to be seems to be a priority right now. Where we're in discussions with one large insurance company, where the CEO basically says, yes, we wanted to build new products and we would utilize that process. But now we need to take that process and work with it internally because we need to be very quick, right? So we have existing products that previously only you could sell in retail. Like people would have to come in, even though it was possible from a regulatory perspective to do it online. Maybe a little bit complicated country to country, but it is definitely possible. As Shaun was saying, basic human contact is very high touch, right? So now their priority isn't to develop super new things. It's just, please take what we have and make it be online so that we can continue selling. And it's very much a pull versus a push. Where previously we would have to come and say, let's, why don't you try this? Now it's more like, hey, we need to take this specific batch of products online.
And I'd just like to add to that, Laura, to say that I've heard it from multiple C-level officers in the last 2 months, quote unquote, this has accelerated our digital transformation by X amount of years, depending on what their horizon looked like. But I'm hearing 5 years, I'm hearing 3 years, I'm hearing 10 years in some instances. But I think the key insight and lesson here is what Jan said, right? Help me take what I was doing in person, move it online, and continue to sell that.
And learn from that. There was a meme online. It was who spearheaded the digital transformation in your company? The CEO, chief digital officer, CTO, or COVID-19?
I'll take D.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm Shaun. I'm curious on the market development kind of, business model, how that's going to fit in the market side. Are there any inklings that you have about how you approach that needs to change now in the COVID era?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of put out a 5-step process through a series of other webinars and content that we've done on literally how to innovate now. And we'll walk through a couple of those here in a moment. So I'm glad for the question because it leads right into how U+ and GrowthX have come to work together. Our success has always been in the commercialization, right? The market development, find a key problem, try and solve it in a very deep and focused way for a small subset of your customers so you can move quickly and learn from that and then eventually scale later. And whether or not you integrate that back into your business or you push it out as a standalone business is entirely up to you. And there's a lot of strategic reasons why you do either. But the reason we work so well together is the biggest limitation we've always had in market development has been internal product development from our corporate clients. They would typically have an internal team that they would either assign or move or allocate towards working on our projects with us. And God bless them all. They're wonderful, but they typically don't have the skill sets and the mindsets inside their organization to move quickly and break things with us and learn fast. So they've always, in other words, been an unintentional bottleneck towards accelerating market development and finding product market fit. And so finding U+ as essentially the product version of GrowthX, as I've always called it, they're the product development accelerator, we're the market development accelerator. We've come to work very well together in essentially being a venture building team to help our corporates execute quickly on the framework of what's the problem, what's the use case, what are the thoughts and actions we need to drive with our customer, who is the first perfect ideal early customer to work with, which is super critical. You need to have someone or some partner that has the same innovative mindset and willing to take the same amount of risk as you are to learn together in the hopes that you can do something transformational. And then what actions and insights and behaviors can you learn from that? And then how do you monetize that? And that's where it gets interesting because it's a different model than what you've traditionally done. And the trend has been to move much more towards service and experience-based business models and consumption-based business models than say traditional commodity-based ones through the course of doing that work.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So shall we dive into?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do it. Yeah. We have one more slide that sort of underpins what we've been already discussing. But one one very, very strong trend we've started seeing is the budgets. Budgets are starting to move closer to the core, right? So consulting 101, everything can be explained by a 2x2 matrix. So we have on one side products and on the other side markets or customers, right? So if you look at the 3 horizons model or anything like this, so if you have new ventures, completely new markets, new products, you have, which is basically building something completely new for new customers to capture a specific market, or growth adjacencies, which are basically how can I upsell current customers with a new product, so entrench myself more in the market that I'm at already, and then core optimization, right? And if you take a look at core optimization, that's 50% of the budgets, growth agencies maybe 20, and new ventures like 1, right? But with the scale of the budgets going down, the potential upside goes up with the risk as well. And we've seen that more and more in the past weeks, at least in the mindset, the budget is moving to the core optimization, and it goes to 2 things actually. One is the core digital transformation, and the other, if the company still wants to stay in some sort of a innovation space, it goes to startup acquisition, because the valuations are dropping for some of the companies that are most affected by COVID, but still have great technology, so they're prime acquisition targets right now. So when the budgets are dropping 30 to 70%, the money is not vanishing; it's just repurposed. So we're seeing more and more discussions of the same process that we've had before, just moving into the core. Before we jump to it, because we had a lot of Q&A with Laura, is there anything that you guys would like to ask or go into before we jump into what that process actually looks like?
Yes, if anybody would like to ask a question, there's 2 ways you can do that. I would say, as we get into the slides that Jan and Shaun have prepared, you can type your questions in. But right now, if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask a quick question, we can do that as well before we sort of dive in.
Yeah, I have a quick one. So have you noticed any changes, or maybe this will come along later, but have you noticed any big changes if you compare Europe to the US, where it comes to the way that capital is coming into startups right now? Is there a big difference between Europe and the US due to Corona at the moment?
Maybe Shaun can speak to the US portion.
Yeah, I can speak to the US portion. There is a focus on 3 key criteria for investing right now across the venture community that I'm continuing to hear, and I think I'm also interested in, which is companies with real traction and velocity, and an opportunity given the new normal. If you find those 3 things together, I'm seeing a lot of smart money being very active in sourcing and seeking startups that meet those 3 criteria. So they're growing quickly through demonstrated traction, whatever that looks like for their business. And they happen to also, on top of that, have some sort of answer or well-positioned for the new normal. Does that make sense?
To me, it does. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Good. John?
Yeah, perfect. And in Europe, Europe is always a little bit more risk averse, I would say. So the one thing I would add is just a nimble operations, right? That they can do everything that Shaun said, but also have relatively low fixed costs and demonstrate the resilience that way. That's the only difference. But most of the European companies that I see, their dream sort of is, let's just raise money in the US, which has its own implications. But that's what I would probably recommend to anybody who's targeting the global market anyways, because the valuation arbitrage exists very much.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been advising companies to do recently is look at markets, look at what we're calling resilient markets. Where are the markets right now that are resilient and that are still behaving and operating, at least to some degree, like they were before. And where and how, whether it's banking or it's insurance or it's consumer products, consumer packaged goods, for example, food products, transportation, shipping, logistics, e-commerce to last mile delivery, anything that supports this new digital work from home environment, right? Zoom has gone from 10 million users to 250 million users in 2 months. Those kinds of markets, there's still healthcare, right? There's still some strong ones doing, operating from a position of strength right now. Are we selling to those folks? Are we marketing to them? Are we trying to learn from them and launch new products together? And that's where I'm putting startups and corporates that are innovating, trying to get their mind into thinking about some of who those resilient markets are.
Shaun, do you have any interesting examples in that direction of some anecdotal stories from one of those industries that you mentioned that has seemed to be kind of like a resilient market, because these are the essential businesses, I suppose, really?
Yeah, I mean, so delivery, obviously, especially last mile delivery right now in major markets, right? I mean, everybody who's heard of DoorDash or Uber Eats that wasn't using it before is now using it. Or Amazon is going absolutely bonkers. Another is media and entertainment. While they may not be serving their content through movie theaters in the traditional way, they're absolutely killing it with digital consumption. And now they're looking at transforming their entire production environments. I've got a portfolio company that does live video streaming, real time, low latency. And they're at the core of helping all the sports, media, and entertainment markets rethink how they're going to serve live content, all the way from piping in, crowd noise into a soccer stadium, football, into a football match based on how the fans are reacting in real time through their devices anywhere in the world, so that it can mimic that experience for a better viewing experience. So there's all sorts of virtual production environments and going to virtual switching and remote. So there's a lot of different markets and industries out there. In fact, LeadSift, the CEO of LeadSift last week released a data set of 17,000 resilient companies around the globe. And they track resilience by tracking online behavior, right? Are they still hiring? Are they? Does it look like they're still buying? Are they spending money on marketing? There's all sorts of data points out there that can define or at least indicate whether or not a company might be defined as resilient. And it's another really good example.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Jan, any interesting anecdotal kind of stories from your experience in helping some of these more legacy types of businesses really embrace digital in terms of product and connecting with customers?
Yes. The most interesting part to me is that they really don't know how, and this skill set has been reserved for the innovation portion. And like I said before, the digital transformation was, let's say, priority number 10, and now it's priority number 1. So there's sort of scrambling to, and in the same mindset that hasn't changed, sort of with the people that are relatively secure in their jobs, to start forcing them to behave very, very differently, as if they were the innovation lab that we'd worked with before. But actually, to just give an example, of an interesting company that's totally outside anything that Shaun mentioned, and I didn't think that would be a market that would actually grow this way. There's a company by a Czech founder called kindest.com, I think, or maybe .org, which is sort of a, let's say, a Kickstarter for NGOs. NGO can put any sort of event, gala, anything like that online, and they can raise money for it. And their business model is through people leaving tips. So they're growing like crazy right now. Also raising money at the right point. I can connect you guys. And I think we have a question from Jan, beautiful name, from Lucerne.
Yeah, I answered it in the chat, but Jan, go ahead.
Feel free if you already answered it and you read it.
Oh, I was referring to Jan Eckert actually unmuting himself, if he'd like. If not, I'm happy to just read it from the chat. But basically, Jan said, look, he's in the higher education space, and he's seeing some companies completely cutting education budgets for their workforce, and he's seeing others using this opportunity at home to do self-service learning, upskilling, and reskilling. And he's asking if we've seen similar things. And on my side, of course, part of the GrowthX businesses is we have GrowthX Academy, which is a boot camp to train people to work in market development roles in startups and do reskilling and upskilling. And so we pay very close attention to this. I see both. I see companies that have the foresight and the fortitude to make those investments now, and I think they're going to be much better positioned in the future for doing so.
Perfect. If we could, we have about half an hour left. So if we could move through the presentation a little bit and then open it up again, Laura, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
Perfect. So we have two methodologies, MXP and a U+ method. MXP is the market acceleration program from GrowthX. U+ method is U+ is product development, process. We've used this, both companies, to tune of building much more than 70 ideas and bring them to the market all across the globe in various different industries. And this is pretty much what it looks like, very, very, very high level, right? So we have a stage gate process. It can be idea, concept, product, business model. It can be, pre-seed, Series A, whatever you want to call it. But basically, we're step by step looking at the riskiest parts in that stage, trying to uncover them so that we can sort of check all the boxes to move to the next one, right? For corporations, there might be even one more that was much more relevant before, is sort of ideation, like what are the things that we could even do? Now that there's no uncertainty about what that is, seems like. And basically, step by step, this is, I have an idea, so I need to verify that there's a concept, there's some value proposition to it. So what that means is we're trying to identify what the target users are, who the target users are, how the product should be positioned, what is even the high level user story, and what are the legal requirements? Can we build something like that? And from there, when we have a concept, we start looking at how to take it to market, how to define the initial product. And Shaun will speak much more in detail to this, but it'll serve a high level. What that means is a lot of user testing, building a lot of prototypes, quick and dirty things that are cheap, but uncover more and more truths, so that we understand what to build. And we basically reverse engineer what the product should be, given what people are telling us, right? And that's the first product that we're going to build. That's the MVP that we're building, while uncovering what sort of business model there should be. Right. When we have that business model, we launch it, scale it, obviously, and if it's corporations, we typically hand it over. There's a team above that, typically U+ and GrowthX together, that does target setting. That works with the internal stakeholders to try to teach them how to do it without us, because we need those partners anyways, so they understand, the startups fail, and corporate startups are no different. And therefore, we need to let them fail quietly and quickly so that we can move on to the ones that work really well. Shaun will speak about the commercialization piece, called MXP. It actually spans across this whole section, but yeah, here it is. Shaun?
Great. If you want to hand over, thanks, Laura. If you can hand over the sharing duties.
I'll do it right away.
Or Jan. Thank you, pal.
Got it.
Okay. All right. All right, wonderful. So it hopefully is loaded. If someone cannot see my screen, feel free to speak up. But as John mentioned, our relationship works very well because their focus is on the development of a product based on the problem that we find with the appropriate partner, with the right scope and intentions to learn quickly where the truth is. And so there's a specific methodology that we have built at GrowthX that addresses this. And the reason we did it this way and why it matters is we were a series of serial entrepreneurs turned investors, turned frustrated investors, because our companies weren't growing. And we found out that they weren't growing, not because they couldn't build products. It's because they couldn't build markets. And we live in this new age of applied innovation and technology where it's never been easier or cheaper to get products launched into a market. But also, it's also never been more difficult or expensive to find real traction and lasting success for those products. So we went about setting up a framework for helping our companies do three things: find the truth about where their product fits in the market, if at all, and what to do about it in the most objective and lean way possible, recognizing they have limited time, money, and resources to do it. Create a functional learning organization out of the group of people responsible for pursuing that truth so they could learn and move quickly to really hone in on a real problem and solution set that creates value. And then the third is to find a business model. Can we find a predictable, profitable, scalable way of growing this over time? And that's the entire purpose. And we have a three milestone approach. It applies just as well in corporates as it does in startups, because a startup is just a new product. It's not any different than anything else. And our entire framework is a learning framework that's about the stage of a product going to a market. And it doesn't matter what product or market it is. It's all about, doesn't matter if it's B2B or B2C or marketplace or a widget or a service. It's all about what we call H to H, human to human interaction, taking unstructured data, creating opportunities to turn that into real actionable insights that solve real problems. And it unfolds in three key milestones: market foundation and discovery, market messaging and outreach, and market results. And in each one, there's a series of steps. And I'm not going to go through all of them in detail because we just don't have time. But I think it's really important to call out that this is a methodology, not a process. Yes, it does have a series of steps, but it's how you approach your market at this stage that creates the fastest path to finding the truth. For example, we shouldn't be out trying to sell to our customers these ideas. What we should be doing is trying to recruit early customers with a similar mindset who share our vision and respect our reality and are willing to go on that journey with us. And that's a very different mindset than just going out to your existing customers and asking your existing marketing and sales organization to sell something new. Time and time again, we've seen new product launches fail. In fact, according to Nielsen, the corporate innovation failure rate is higher than the funded startup rate in Silicon Valley, which I thought was shocking until we actually started to work inside of some of these corporates and realized that you have two kinds of product market fit you have to deal with. You have to find product market fit outside your organization with your companies, but you also have to find it inside with your stakeholders who are really your investors, who need to see change and momentum and progress. And it has to fit within that dynamic or it fails as well, especially if they don't allocate dedicated resources towards it. When you do shared resources and you treat innovation as a hobby, you're setting yourself up for failure. So at the completion of each milestone, there's a series of questions that you should be able to answer. We want to take these unknowns and turn them into knowns. In fact, when you're doing this the right way as a commercialization leader, you recognize that what you don't know is much more important than what you do. And so the objective of the market development leader, commercialization leader in this approach is to find the answers to these key questions. So at the end of milestone one, which is all about what resources do you have to execute, what kind of milestone do we want to set for the market so that we can learn effectively, and who's our ideal early customer, and how to prioritize everything around that. These are the things you should know. What resources do I need to execute on the idea? Who's an ideal early customer? How to prioritize for learning and eventually for growth, because learning is what leads to revenue, not the other way around. Where to find our early customers that we're going to work with, just a cohort that's statistically significantly large enough for us to validate our idea and keep it tight, right? We want it there's that saying of, if you want to go fast, you go alone. At this stage, we do want to go fast, and we do need to keep the team small, nimble, and freed up to learn quickly. How do you propose to charge, and how do you propose to get customers, and how does that impact the resources that you have? What channels are we going to use to find and reach out to these folks? What kind of key early market milestone are we going to create? In other words, like, I need 3 pilot customers in the first 6 months, and these are the things I need to learn, and this is the profile and criteria of those people. And then how are we going to go out and find them and attract them? And then once we know that, then we can go into milestone 2, which is all about what we call market messaging. It's all about trying to get your customers to give you the 2 things you need right now, which once again isn't revenue. The 2 things you need right now are time and truth. You want people who are going to tell you the truth, and they're going to give you the time necessary to learn together. Those are the resources. That's the relationship that you want to build. And as corporates that already have existing customer bases, it should be, in theory, much easier and faster for you to be able to find, identify, and create those relationships and leverage them, because you already are familiar to each other. In the startup world, we like to say that a startup is a stranger in a strange place with a strange offering, going to another stranger, asking them to do something strange with them. And if you think about it that way, it's a much more challenging experience to go through this framework when you don't have credibility and you're not a known commodity, and you don't have those relationships. In a corporation, you have a tremendous opportunity to leverage your existing relationships. The key is to figure out which ones and how to approach them and when, and how to structure a relationship that optimizes the learning for both sides. And that's where the ideal customer profile based on the idea is so critical. And then what resources you're going to commit to this, because it has to be equal on both sides. You have to give as much as you get. And then how do you talk to them in a way that finds that truth? So that's market messaging, that's tracking that through instrumentation, and then it's actually performing the outreach in whatever shape or form that looks like. And by the end of the 2nd milestone, you should know how to talk to your market in a way that generates honest feedback. You should know how to attract and qualify the appropriate kinds of customers under this profile so that you can grow and add more. You should know how to talk about your unique value proposition before you talk about your unique selling proposition. And there's a difference, and this is super critical. Most of us lead with our selling props. Selling props tell us what you do. They tell us the features and functionality, how it works, etc. They're product focused. But what we really care about are value propositions, which tell me not what you do, but what you do for me. And they're very focused on the problem and the solution set. And we use the words of our customers to build those. So we lead with, I can help you in this way, as opposed to, this is what we do, and then eventually get to the value of that. It helps us get there where we want to go a lot faster. And then we start that functional learning of getting feedback from the market based on our hypothesis of, this is the value we think we can deliver to you. Let's talk about it. Then you build your messaging map that says, these are the messages we use for this channel with this kind of customer profile in these circumstances. And then we start building out our initial portfolio of marketing assets. What are the things we need to get people to actually want to work with us? And then how do we create that closed feedback loop so that we're constantly iterating and optimizing the messaging? And so once we've done that and we've reached out to people and we're actually starting to talk to humans to try and recruit them to work with us on this vision, we now have to start measuring and managing the results and the response from that in a way that gets us to that product market fit that we're looking. So this is where we really start to operationalize the learning. And in this milestone, we should, by the time we're done with it, we should know how to successfully run a functional learning plan that we can rinse and repeat on the next product with the next market over and over again if we want. We know how to measure and manage our market response at scale so that we can start to integrate this back into the organization and scale it in the right way. And make sure that we build the right organization to support it, because the mindset of people who are taking something someplace new is very different than the ones of the people who have been managing an existing business. It's not that one is better than the other. They just have a different mindset, different characteristics and attributes, and we need to recognize that. how to validate all the steps across these milestones, what messaging works, what our conversion rates look like so that we can start to build a marketing and sales engine around it, and how to scale that and build a team to support it. And what kind of brand do we want to build around this product, just not just from a corporate and product brand, but from an employment brand. What kind of people do we want to attract into working on this particular project? And then how do we support that? And if you do all these things, you have these answers, you should have indications of product market fit, which I define as when the supply is not there to meet the demand. Now people are pulling you towards them as opposed to you pushing in their direction. Jan, do you want to speak a little bit about how we govern this from a project perspective, and then we can go to Q&A?
Yeah, we have, but I think 3 minutes till 10 minutes till the end. So I'll try to summarize it quickly. This is just so for the corporate folks, so a little bit more understandable. We typically work with a corporate sponsor. There's a commercialization team that may or may not work across the portfolio of different activities. So different startups, different products that we're trying to build. There is typically a business lead, which could be even the CEO of that new company that's being built. And there's a person internally as well to that team that is trying to help with the delivery. So sort of the sandwich situation where we're reporting to the sponsor, we're helping the CEO on the high level processes, and then we also deliver the resource, the one resource, the main contact, but also the other resources that are necessary to start building it up. Anything from marketing down to developers, right? So that's how it's typically set up. Sorry, Shaun, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, and this is what the team can even look like. So that's understandable. What parts we cover, what are the responsibilities that we cover, etc. I would skip this for now. If that's interesting, we can come back to it later. I just sort of visualize that the process, the process we have and the sort of the scope that we cover is relatively wide.
Yeah, and I think in the interest of time, Laura, we can just go to the questions and discussion now, and we can share the deck with you, and you can distribute it to the entire group later.
Okay, that sounds good. So again, people can ask questions, either just unmute yourself and ask a question or type one in the chat. But I have one that I wanted to ask you, Shaun, and Jan also, if you have some thoughts on this. The word learning is obviously very core to the approach. And I was wondering if you can say anything about characteristics to look for in people that are going to, be able to form a good part of that learning team, maybe versus the characteristics that would be more existent on that other more, maintenance and operationalize, something existing team.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. That's a great question. It's something I write about extensively and have written about and talk about a lot, because it can create a winner and a loser. That person can either make or break one of these projects. So what we see is someone with a growth mindset, someone who has a learn-it-all mindset instead of a know-it-all mindset. They embrace ambiguity with a passion. They love to create and design and architect. They have a tremendous customer-facing acumen. They have strong, what I call business and market acumen. Business means they understand business models of their customers and their customers' customers, so they can figure out how to contribute to that. They have a strong market acumen, which means domain expertise in a particular area, or they can ramp up that domain expertise very quickly. In other words, adopt the lexicon, the taxonomy of a group. They communicate beautifully across different functions. I like to make the joke that they can talk to humans and engineers. And they know how to translate. And that's always, for example, that's always been my persona is, I'm not a technologist. I make the joke that I can't spell HTML, but I do know how to take technology and help it create value, right? And do that in business terms. And so this needs to be someone who can do that. They also need to be a bit of a coach and a coordinator and a leader, because they have to run this functional learning plan. So sometimes I know we call them the commercialization officer, but I like to call them the chief learning officer. And their expertise is to really figure out those three things we talked about. What's the truth about where this fits in the market if it does at all? How do I drive the learning plan with everyone, the customers, the internal teams, the stakeholders, et cetera, and show that work as we go along? And then how do I find a business model in the course of that? And so it's a very unique set of skills. Sometimes they come out of product, sometimes they come out of marketing, sometimes they come out of sales. Sometimes they're, you know, hypos with MBAs who've been in branding or other areas. But when you talk to them about that functional role of being a commercialization lead, the right ones, if you tell the truth about how hard it is and how unique it is, you'll attract the right people either inside or outside your organization into that role.
Thank you. And maybe Jan, for you, so that other aspect, truth, is very important to the work that you both do. Jan, how do you ensure that you really build the truth into your product and not the bias of the people that are involved in the team? Because it's very difficult to separate, sort of the solution that you want from what the market wants. So Jan, how do you sort of operationalize that in the course of product development?
Right. I'll answer simply, then I'll come back to the team and come back to this. The simple answer is if we did that, our business would fail. First, the customer's business would fail, and then our business would fail, right? Because there's nothing to work on for us. So our incentives are very much aligned. But I just wanted to add to what Shaun was saying, the kind of team that would work with that person, let's say be a CEO or head of innovation or whatever, we always looked for three things: very simple: drive, resilience, and sort of quote unquote willingness to do anything. So if you have drive, don't have resilience, you can sprint really fast, but then you stop, right? If you're resilient but you're not moving, it's not really help to be a stone, a rock on a road or something. You're not going to move much further. And if you're not willing to do anything, sort of willing to learn, willing to look a little bit silly, and you always look silly when you're trying to learn new things, it's not going to work out, right? And a good proxy for that is, for us, we found it's people who do or did sports or music, right? Because nothing comes easy to you when, like, if you want to learn to play an instrument, or you're going to be good at sports, you're going to fail so many times that you're just going to, just going to get used to it. So that's always, if there was one question that I was allowed to ask at an interview when we're hiring someone, it's not like, do you do sports or music? But back to your question, the methodology is such for a reason that we try to reverse engineer from the people, try to figure out what it is that we should be building, right? So we already come to the process with an unbiased mind, and we have to. It's true that we have to teach our people to be like that, because it's very easy to get very specific, to show a prototype and the person who asking the question, the potential customer, to ask, what do you think about our beautiful prototype, right? We spent a lot of time on it. We really like your honest opinion. We haven't slept in 2 weeks. Hope it's great, right? So, and that's just I would say hygiene in terms of how you ask these, how you conduct these UX questions. I actually ran a 3 hour long for Google last fall, just going through this process from how do you even say hi when this person walks in, or you have Skype interview and something like that. So it is not magic. It's something that can be taught, but from our business standpoint, we have to do this because our business is connected to the customer's business. The customer's business works out, we continue, customers happy, we continue working on something else, ideally together. If it fails, so we have all the incentives to try to figure out how to make this work.
Thank you. Do others have questions? If you would like to ask a question, just unmute your microphone and you can ask it directly. Or you can also write something into the chat there. I think there's been a little bit of back and forth. I think we got that answered about the LLCs. No, does anybody else have a question? Okay, I think people are absorbing a lot. That was actually quite a lot that that was presented. I know I still am myself. But we have just a few minutes left here. Maybe if I can put you on the spot, Jan and Shaun, and ask you an unexpected question. So, you know, we're in this COVID situation, you know, here in San Francisco, we're still sort of, you know, not really quite open. We've got the shelter in place order extended through the end of May. There in Prague and in Europe, you know, you're starting to open up a little bit more. So maybe you're, maybe you have some insights, you know, from a sort of return to a new normal that can be instructive for us here. So I'll start with you, Jan. But if you had to make either a prediction or share a hope or just a thought, I thought it could be interesting to think about the 3 focus areas that Swissnex has this year. So they're around digital society, future economy, and human and planetary health. So taking that very general question, would you like to make any predictions, share any hopes or thoughts around one or more of those categories? Digital society, future economy, human and planetary health.
Right. So I think it's a great question. I'll stray a little bit in that answer in terms of, you know, a prediction, and that prediction is very, very hard to make. I can speak to, you know, we Czech Republic is famous for beers. So I spoke with the largest beer company here, and you know, as everything is opening up, even before we started discussions and we hope to start a project, those projects went on hold. Now we're talking about very different projects, but what struck me as the most interesting was they don't want to, it's a very pragmatic thinking. They don't want to start right away. They are literally going to wait for a month to see how many pubs are going to go out of business, so that they can recalculate their business model.
Okay.
And it's just very pragmatic. I was like, okay, wow, this is cruel and real world. But in terms of the prediction, I think what we're finding is, you know, how many of us have had FaceTime, Zoom, or whatever calls with our friends suddenly? Our company had a virtual beer night. We had a guitar concert as well, right? So people are, you know, maybe you know, for me, what's the most interesting? We've been sort of forced to, by society, you know, go into these offices and stay together because we were taught that's how you should do it, and that's what's expected. Right? But we're finding that, at least in my teams, we're no less productive than we were. Some teams are even more productive, right? But at the same time, people want to be together. People want to have that human-to-human interaction, like Shaun said. And one thing for us in terms of digital society, we're definitely going to be much more remote than we were. We have people all across Europe and US as well. And so we have to, but we're sort of in Prague. We have a big office, and we're just going to drop it. But we're going to be much more mindful about creating these events, these situations where people come together for specific reason, and to be mindful about what sort of connections we're creating. So that's sort of top of mind for me. What that looks like, and how to design it the best so that we promote collaboration and create, you know, when we hire a new person that hasn't been with the company for 5 years or 2 years or whatever, how do we onboard them properly, and how do they create relationships the right way, right, with our project managers in Vermont or with our sales guy who's in San Francisco.
Great, thank you. And Shaun, how about you? Predictions, hopes, or thoughts on digital society, future economy, or human and planetary health?
Yeah, I mean, I think digital society right now is as much an aware society or a mindful society as it's ever been. I think we have an opportunity now, all of us, to reflect personally and professionally on who we are, what we're doing. There's this new, more direct relationship. Frankly, it might sound harsh, but society is reestablishing its relationship with death and uncertainty, and things that in the past 100+ years have really been mostly eradicated. You know, if you think about it, right? We've had the last 25 years the greatest advance in human history. We've pulled 2 billion people out of poverty. We've never been safer, healthier, at least we thought, and more advantaged. The middle class is growing globally, or had been. So we've enjoyed a really good run, and now we've been hit in the mouth with this change that we are forced to accept. And if you look through history, there's always, every time there's been a forced acceptance of change, the human spirit has responded and done very, very well. So I do believe there will be a new normal. It's going to transform the workforce. It's going to transform the way we work. It's going to transform the health and wellness of every human as well as the planet, especially when there's less carbon and CO2 in the air. But it's going to come back, I think, stronger than it ever was. It's just going to look very different.
Great. Thank you very much. For my part, I would just like to share my hope that we can find ways to work with each other to place human and planetary health at the center of our future economy. And I think the digital society is upon us. So hopefully we can also do that in a way that supports human and planetary health. Shaun and Jan, we are pretty much at the end. We're a couple of minutes over here. Did you guys already give the information for the next time that people can connect with you, or should they just reach out to you individually if they would like to learn more and see about collaboration opportunities with your companies?
I would say feel free to. Yeah, thank you. I would say feel free to reach out to us when we send the presentation. It has information, it has contact information for both Shaun and I. We do this, of course, in the workshop format if any corporations are interested in, this was very high level, right? So very much in detail, and as Shaun likes to say, we can do it for you, with you, or alongside you. we had so many presentations together that I feel like we could do the others for. So we can of course do that, and we'd be happy to, if you have any further questions, set up calls, send us an email. We're ready to answer. Thank you for your time as well.
Yes, and in the deck there's an outline of what an additional product and market development workshop would look like to help you identify inventory ideas, select which ones to execute on, and actually start to get to work on innovating now.
Great, thank you very much. So I have recorded this session. Hopefully my audio is going to be fine for the recording. I know I had some issues there in the beginning, so hopefully that's fine in the recording. I will follow up and send you all a link where you can access that after this is over. And so with that, we can thank you very much, Jan and Shaun, for sharing those thoughts with us and those frameworks. And I'm excited to dive into that deeper myself. And thank you for everybody for joining today. Just one last announcement. Swissnex San Francisco is also on the first day of its digital bootcamp for our startups that are with the InnoSwiss program. My colleague Franziska has been on the call here, and she wants to invite everybody to a happy hour that we're doing with that cohort of startups. Franziska, do you want to say anything real quick? I know that you've put a message in the chat there, and people can access the live event on Remo, which is a fun little tool. If you haven't used that one, it might be fun just to play around with that as well. Do you want to say anything, Franziska?
Yeah, just quickly that everybody, hello, my name is Franziska, and I'm running the startup program, and I would love to invite you all for the happy hour, as I said, and thank you very much, Shaun and Jan, actually, for that workshop. It was a great kind of prompt, and I think it would be amazing if you would like to join. We have 7 startups that are in the current boot camp, and we invited also the alumni from last year and our Peer 17 community. So should be fun. The tool is new. I'm looking forward to the experiment, but it should facilitate the networking as almost in reality. So yeah, feel free to join.
Thanks, Franziska. So hopefully some of you, we'll see you on Remo. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee and I will be with you in just a moment. Thanks, everybody. Take care and enjoy the rest of your Monday.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.